I didn't know that, or somehow that went blip out, and he all of a sudden he starts singing, and I laugh because I'm like, oh, is this gonna go well? Is this not gonna go well? And I am Teresa. Welcome to Cocoon Cast, where we deep dive into movies and discuss all things cinema.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Today we'll be discussing the new movie, Wonka.
Let's get started.
Willy Wonka has just wandered into town with a magic suitcase and a dream to sell magnificent chocolate. But he quickly finds himself in the crosshairs of the leading chocolatiers of the day. With every step he takes, Willy builds a loyal following amongst the townspeople and develops a few friendships along the way. But he has to ask himself, with all the obstacles placed in his path, is his dream worth the pain?
Rebecca, Willy Wonka is in town, and he has a magic suitcase.
Man, I want that guy's phone number.
I would say, let's talk about production value of this movie.
I was really surprised when we saw the trailers how much detail went into the production. It's minimal, but it makes an impact. I love the choice of color. I love the texture. It just screamed like Wonka waiting to happen.
It's Wonka waiting to happen. I'm laughing. You're like, I could feel it. There was a part that it felt like you could reach out and just kind of grab it, and then the little chocolate fountain. I don't know about you, but did you feel that where it's like, ooh, ooh, ooh?
This movie definitely lives better in film. I remember when the first production photo was shown of Timothy's costume, I was just blithely curious to see how it would pan out. But once the trailer hit, I'm like, okay, I'm interested.
Wow. So first trailer made you excited, or was it, I saw it a few times and then it kind of warmed up to it, or?
First trailer had me interested, and not because of the names attached in the production side of things, although there were several actors and actresses that I did recognize that made me curious to see what direction they were going to take it. It was just the detail and just the snappiness that seemed to come through. Sure, there's some very dark and almost Dickensian qualities with kind of the rough and tumble parts of the town, but it wasn't distracting like that. It just felt very cohesive.
I laugh when you were saying some names attached to it, and I keep thinking of Hugh Grant in the little jar as the Oompa Loompa. You're like, I'm wondering what's going to happen. I'm like, he's a little guy dancing in a jar.
Too late. I've started dancing now. Once we've started, we can't stop.
Can't you be curious about that?
He was a little bit of a scene stealer in the first trailer. I was already curious, and then all of a sudden you have Hugh Grant trying to be this comedically serious gentleman.
Good evening.
So you're the funny little man who's been following me.
Funny little man. How dare you? I will have you know that I am a perfectly respectable size for an Oompa Loompa.
Who's an Oompa Loompa?
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think the casting was pretty smart.
I was really nervous about Timothy.
Oh, he's in everything right now.
He's in everything.
In every trailer we see.
Nothing fancy.
I understand. Nothing fancy.
He's in there also, I think.
I do like Timothy's acting. I think the problem sometimes Hollywood has is, oh, we have this new person that fits all of these roles that we've been looking for. Throw them in everything. And I was just nervous because I know Timothy has a musical background to some degree.
I didn't know that, or somehow that went blip out, and he all of a sudden he starts singing, and I laugh because I'm like, oh, is this gonna go well? Is this not gonna go well? And it went fine. He did great.
He did all right. Yeah, I was just so nervous because there's been reports that the director supposedly saw Timothy singing, goes, he doesn't have to audition. I want this guy.
Wow.
And okay. I was just nervous because I'm like, anytime a director says that, it's either the greatest bit of hyperbole you've ever seen just to drum up PR for the movie, or there's actually something to it. And thankfully, it was the latter. There was something to it.
I appreciated that, too. And Kayla Lane, who played Noodle.
I love Noodle.
She was so sweet.
I think Noodle is probably my favorite character in this film.
I'm making chocolate, of course. How do you like it?
I don't know. I've never had any.
You've never had chocolate?
Still no.
I was surprised at how much presence she had, and she grabbed my attention and my heart, obviously. And not because, she's young. She was a strong girl. She needed some help, but not much. She was pretty resourceful.
I find it interesting to see anytime you have an older, more experienced actor
Yes.
like Olivia Colman come into this place where they feel like they're playing themselves in the roles that but they kind of water it down for kids. And it's really a challenge to your scene partner not to stomp all over it. I think that she did a really good job balancing off Olivia.
I think there was good chemistry amongst all of the actors and actresses. And I know you had talked about the diversity quality as well. That was impressive to me.
To me, the diversity was something that was not something that needs to be remarked on. I'm sure if you go through a bunch of meta discussion, you can discuss it, but the movie does not present this to us. It's us as critics and film goers to find the meta layering. So I thought that was nice because
Yes, I appreciate
I don't
that.
feel this implication to make judgments because a certain character is of a certain race that they're going to make these decisions in story. They don't say in universe this person is this way, therefore they're this.
Yes.
It is.
And that honestly, and that's how movies should be to me, which is there will be a wonderful when the day when we don't have to comment on it as if, wow, we're finally getting there. It's we've arrived. It's normal. And I know in our day-to-day life, it's normal. And movies, I think, are finally figuring that out in a good way.
I think it's all the more striking to me, especially considering that the original writing of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory has gone through a few revisions to the original text in this manner.
And recently, even. Let's talk about the screenplay. I enjoyed the screenplay. How about you?
There's definitely some snappy little moments.
Enumba what now?
In fact, in Lumperland, I am regarded as something of a whopper. They call me Lofty. So I will thank you to stop gawping at me as though I was something unpleasant you'd found in your handkerchief. I find it uncomfortable and, frankly, rude.
Rowan Atkinson and his chocoholic monks.
Oh, my goodness. You've seen it when you see Flying Nuns and Mr. Bean is a priest. Run away! I laugh because we saw it in Dolby Cinema earlier in the afternoon, about what, fourth full, half full?
Yeah, I'd say about a fourth full.
Okay, I know we had looked at later showings and it was, 95% full at that point?
This is definitely one of those movies I'm glad we saw earlier because it gave me audio room.
Yes, I would agree.
To appreciate the creative compositions that have been put in this movie.
Meaning the music and...
Yes.
Okay.
Especially because I know I've seen people discuss this online, but I want to confirm this is a musical.
Correct. This is identified as a musical. And one of the thoughts I had was we had seen Wish recently and we talked about most of the music in Wish was pretty forgettable, wasn't too catchy. The music in this was actually very catchy to me. And I remember just kind of bum, 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 bum.
Too late. I've started dancing now. Once we've started, we can't stop, see?
Oompa, loompa, doompa-dee-doo. I've got a tragic tale for you.
Going along with it. And the screenplay, maybe I liked it more than you, but I was listening around and I could hear people chuckling at the right spots. And there were parts of it I thought were actually really creative and subtle, but funny.
I agree. I think that there's a couple jokes that if you're familiar with the world the characters are living in, it definitely lands a little better. But one of the things I really appreciated about this movie was the emotional landscape of the characters that was really delved into. I think Wonka is almost unreachable in Dahl's original stories. I think it takes actors like Gene Wilder to kind of bring him down to earth.
Yes.
Because the magic of Wonka is supposed to be he's this aspirational figure, but if you're a filmmaker, you realize that gets either old really quickly or you have to completely sell it through. And considering the whole original story of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is that Wonka is losing his spark. He needs somebody to leave his factory to because he wants to do different things. Now, that may be varying based on adaptation, but I think you need to have that vulnerability. And they quickly get into that right off the bat, but you also see how he influences his interactions with other characters as well.
There was a part where he was clearly by himself. He jumps off the boat, lands, and has this wonderful, wonderful dream. We were laughing that he lost all of his money the first day. Literally.
But he doesn't lose it, per se, through nefarious means.
Well, a few. But accident. But also, it sets the stages. He's generous. He had given money to a young woman with a baby. And I think immediately they are setting the stage where you will like him. Or they want you to like him.
The songs do a great job of character mapping as well.
That's a good point. I appreciate that. The thought I had too in watching the trailers originally was thinking about Gene Wilder and wondering how this would play now. And I really think Timothée really did a good job of feeling like Gene Wilder, but yet different. But that, like you said, that vulnerability, that affection you had for him, and really wanting him to succeed.
I think the temptation, especially as you've seen an older Wonka who's become more cynical and weary of the world.
Sure, true.
Is to play up that cynicism in moments where you would expect it. Mm-hmm. But I like how Timothée shows us the idealized Wonka. This is somebody who wants to dream, who wants to change the world, and is somewhat innocent in some ways. I know Hugh Grant's Oompa Loompa talks to him about the choices that you make have consequences that you might not otherwise see. Mm-hmm. And I think the way that they played that could have been a little bit more heavy-handed and caused this Wonka to be a lot more jaded.
Yes.
But I like how it created another lens for him to view life through.
I agree with that. He felt softer, I think is the phrase that I would use. Do we have any questions from the box?
Comparing this to the previous Wonka movies, how do you feel the cinematography work? Is it a complete throwback to the original? Is it a modern adaptation? Is it a good balance? How do you think they did?
I think Chung Hoon Chung did a really good job of bridging the modern, but also still pulling in elements from the classic. The classic adaptation of Gene Wilder feels like a straight up big budget musical in a lot of ways, except for the scenes where it doesn't need to be. And those are quickly played for comedic effect, and then it goes straight back to the musical. I think Chung really took the time to create a movie that feels modern to a cinema that would be playing it today, but also still bringing in the motions of the characters and continuing that musical landscape.
I like the fact that it was bright, and maybe it's because we keep seeing these movies that are very saturated, but it was bright, but it wasn't like aggressively bright. It didn't feel like, little kids' nursery with, clowns and craziness. And even there was a scene with balloons, and the balloons even felt a little tempered. So it was crisp, but it wasn't so overly bright that it was just feeling like, I'm walking out and my eyes are spinning. To me, it was a beautiful movie. I'm really glad we were able to see it on Dolby. My suspicion is IMAX would also be a really great experience.
I think that Dolby kind of fits more of the standard framing of film. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, almost gives it a surreal quality. Sometimes IMAX just feels like bigger for the sake of bigger.
Oh, I think that's true as well.
So I would be curious if you and I saw it on IMAX, if it would change our perception of some of the sequences in the film.
That's a good point. I appreciate that. Do we have any other questions from the box?
When you look at the three different Wonka movies, we have the folks that are kind of in the Gene Wilder camp. We have folks that are probably in the Johnny Depp camp. And now we've got this new version. Who do you think this is going to land well with, and who's a good audience for this movie?
I think this is going to land more with the Wilder camp. They specifically use several musical motifs from Wilder's film to bridge it, but there's also the way that the characters are treated.
I think for me, it's interesting that we're talking about comparison because the Johnny Depp version literally escaped me. it wasn't to me any type of a comparison or, oh, he brought this in. No disrespect to Johnny Depp if you like him or if you've enjoyed his version of this. It just did not enter my mind for this. It really felt more like Gene Wilder. But like you said, a newer version. Obviously, this is an origin story. So it is a different version. But I think that innocence, that wanting to connect with people and bring people together had that sweetness quality that I really appreciated.
I think Dahl is a tough author to adapt.
Oh, I think so.
Because there's that fine line of vicious, biting satire that weaves its way through his works.
Yes.
But it's also accompanied by a real belief in that the goodness in humans does exist. And then you have that weaving line tempering the, well, maybe sometimes it will come out in the right circumstances on a cloudy day.
Which is interesting because I think this movie would feel like family candy. Pun sort of intended, but family candy in terms of, I think this movie is pretty safe for most families, most audiences. I would say the part that pulls me away from fully saying, any kid could see this, any adult could see this, and this may be a personal bugaboo that I have, but there was a lot of references to alcohol and drinking in this movie, which honestly surprised me. You know, Wonka lands and he grabs a little glass of gin. There's a little, candy song with all the different kinds of alcohol, and even Hugh Grant is the Oompa Loompa, Lofty, the Oompa Loompa. Before he goes to bed, he pours himself like a little martini. He's drinking. I'm thought, holy moly, that's a lot of drinking.
I don't know what that says about this world. Sometimes you gotta just take a stiff one.
I guess. I think that there was something about it that watered down or diluted the family candy version of it. And I was a bit disappointed in that. Understanding that alcohol, obviously, is part of our culture. I get that. But the fact that it was such a part of it, it surprised me, to be honest with you.
There's a lot of talk of addiction in this movie. I know we mentioned the chocoholic monks earlier.
Correct. And that's actually what they called them. But it did surprise me. It was like, wow, but it wasn't like wink, 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 nod. It's just out there. They're not hiding it or, trying to bury it somewhere or anything. It was just like, boom, it's there. Rebecca, it is that time of the show where we have 5 flying moths. They're going to be eating candy real soon. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think?
I think I'm sweet on 3 moths today.
3 moths. Number 1 reason for your 3 moths.
This is a solid movie. I wish the music could have been a little bit more pronounced.
Meaning stronger or?
Stronger.
Stronger.
For a musical, it needs songs that are more oomph for your loompa.
Oompa loompa? I know, that's what I'm thinking. More oompa loompa. Do you think it needed more music? Or just stronger music in what it had?
Stronger music in what it had. I didn't mind that the music was spaced out and it gave room for the characters to develop in organic ways instead of just singing about it, which is definitely a style of musical where you have characters singing every line and only bit spaces where it needs to be emphasized in dialogue.
Correct, that's true.
I didn't mind that choice for this movie. I just wish the music could have been stronger.
All right. And what is your favorite Wonka movie?
I think the Gene Wilder adaptation is more closely hewn to the text in some ways.
Sure, I would agree with that as well.
I know the Tim Burton adaptation takes songs deliberately from the book, but I think the Gene Wilder adaptation has some moments to me that just stick. I know for me, the big one is when the husband is kidnapped and they want the stash of Wonka bars. I love that kind of satire. It is just so ridiculous. It feels very much of its time period, but it's still funny. I like the fact that Gene's Wonka, you really felt the turmoil of this man. You really, but he also felt very much like a trickster. You never knew what was coming. Depp's adaptation came across as a spoiled brat, and Timothy's, he sometimes feels a little too early to tell what kind of Wonka he's going to be. You're optimistic that he turns into the best parts of Gene's Wonka, but you don't see enough of it.
That is true. I was laughing. You're talking about that song. And I want to say, oh, when you were an adult, you liked that song. I'm thinking, no, when you were a kid, you liked that song too. I would love for our cinema community to comment below with the 3 Wonka movies, what their favorite is, what ratings that they would give each of the 3. I would say for me, it's a 3 and a wing, a little bit higher than yours, just because I think the screenplay was pretty smart. And as we were saying, I think there were parts that were funny, and I appreciated that, knowing that Paul King had directed Paddington. Was not a fan of Paddington. No, it did really well in the theaters. And there was a bit of a pause for me to kind of go, I don't know if I'm going to like this as much. And I did like it. And we were talking about the singing, the acting was pretty good. However, I do think the Gene Wilder one would be closer to a 4 to me.
I agree, especially considering I know Pure Imagination is probably my favorite song from that movie.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
But my second favorite song is a song that often gets dismissed. And to me, that song, Cheer Up Charlie, there's so much work put into that song that kind of puts some of the music in this movie to shame.
Thanks for joining us. We're always excited to create experiences to bring our cinema community together.
Watch the notifications for our review of the new movie Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Then come back to the channel this weekend for our weekly show, Movies and More, where we will have more movie reviews, the latest Hollywood news, and commentary with snark meant to amuse.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and to share our channel.
If you enjoyed this movie review, you might click the link to check out our review of Godzilla Minus One. Or click the other link to watch last week's show where we reviewed Renaissance, a film by Beyonce.
Remember, cinema community movies are better
Better
together.
together.
Thanks for watching. See you in the next review.